Welcome to FTB Weekends for Saturday, the 31st of December 2022, New Year's Eve. Of course, we're recording this the night before, or afternoon before. It's currently 3:58 p.m. Eastern on Friday, the 30th of December 2022. And of course, I am your host, Jason C. McLean. And of course, well, as every week, welcome Don McSweeney. Hey, Don. Hey, and we have a special guest joining us, FTB contributor, comedy reviewer, legal analyst, all-around artist,
election correspondent,
coverager, and artist, as you can see in the background. Welcome back, Samantha Gold. How's it going?
Hi.
Hi. All right. So we're going to look back at 2022. Wow, I can't believe it seems like we were just doing one of these last year.
I don't want to talk about the way time flows. We just have to stick to the facts.
Okay, all right. But it's still 3:58 p.m. So yeah, just in case anything develops in these stories. Okay, so let's start. Well, I guess locally in Quebec, there was an election this year. We did cover that on the site. Well, I mean, honestly, I kind of predicted the overall result, but I didn't think the undercard would have gone as quick. I didn't go as quickly as it did, and I definitely didn't think the undercard was going to happen the way it happened.
Everybody predicted the outcome.
The overall outcome.
More about other parties screwing up than it was about a massive victory for Legault, because all he really did was fire up his base with increasingly bigoted remarks. He made a lot of ignorant remarks about poverty, stuff that he continues to maintain, and then goes, "Oh, I'm not out of touch," says the guy with the $1 million mansion in Outremont. But, you want to talk about screw-ups. The Liberals had a perfect opportunity. If they had just taken a step to the left, they would have gotten the young vote, they would have gotten the ethnic vote, and the vote in Montreal would not have been so divided. If anything, this was a good election for Québec solidaire, as presenting themselves as kind of a left of center party that, a lot of people resent because they supported the language law, Bill 96, but they're, I think, the only major party to speak directly out against the secularism law, Bill 21. And so I know that a lot of people in our age cohort, say the mid-30s to early 40s kind of thing, and younger, were leaning Quebec solidaire. And then pretty much outside of Montreal, you had the CAQ vote. And they didn't have a pro in Montreal. They didn't, and with young people, so they didn't do any active campaigning on campuses the way Solidaire and the Liberals did, and the Greens. They didn't, they stuck with what they knew would get them in.
Yeah, well, they didn't just oppose, like speak out against it. They did they kind of theatricalized it. They did a stunt, a big demonstration against that law in the National Assembly. Like, that's how you show up political parties taking something seriously, if they're getting to the level of let's get on the news with this. Like, but yeah, honestly, in my riding, it was disappointing because we thought we could have taken out the Liberal leader. I find that it's kind of split. Like, it's almost like there was always the split in Montreal between PQ and Liberals. Now it's between Liberals and Quebec solidaire. The only problem is once you get outside of Montreal, it's all CAQ, and that's the problem.
And I think it was made worse to a certain extent by Balarama Holness deciding to kind of go it on his own and do his own party. I think that, looking back on, my following of the election and my coverage, I think he would have been better off just making kind of an appeal to the Liberals and seeing if they could find some middle ground and presenting himself as a candidate in one of their ridings. I think that if they had sort of merged their values and veered a little bit towards the left, they could have been a strong force. But instead, there was a lot of waffling. Like, at one point, they were supporting the language law, and then they weren't. They refused to take a hard line against Bill 21. All they said was that they would not renew the notwithstanding clause, which has a whole legal whatever behind it, which I don't think now's the right time to go into it. I've written a few articles on the subject.
Yeah,
but they wouldn't really commit to. I find the big problem was that Balarama decided to go it on his own when I think that he and the Liberals could have made some kind of deal, and the Liberals didn't really commit to a cohesive platform.
Well, Don, I know you're a fan of Balarama and his movement. Do you see eye to eye on that assessment?
So here's the thing. Yeah, it was a spoiler. It caused the problem. But really, I feel like as long as it's just gerrymandered so the votes of Montrealers don't count. It's kind of all up for grabs and absurdity. So the reason I don't think he could have found a middle ground with the Liberals is because specifically the things he said that make him different and make me want to pay attention are the things that would be too far for the Liberals. For instance, giving Montreal the city-state powers when really we are the economic engine of Quebec. So we shouldn't have to have the same rules as places that are more rural or have less immigration or have fewer people per kilometer. We shouldn't have the same rules, and we should be a specifically bilingual, trilingual, mind your own business. We know how to communicate in Montreal, and we shouldn't have the same rules. And him bringing those points to the forefront as even options was what made me interested, because why doesn't Montreal have more power? Why are we letting the way the borders go just dictate the fact that we could vote till we're blue in the face, and the place that makes the money and has the most people has the least voting power?
Well, the other issue is that the voting seemed to go on generational lines a great deal. Like, I've spoken to a lot of young Quebecois, and the impression they get is the CAQ does not represent us. They represent the boomers, and that they're literally just waiting for the boomers to die. They're convinced that the CAQ will die with the boomer generation, which I think is, I think it's wishful thinking. I think it's kind of naive. Right wingers are converting young people all the time, unfortunately.
More so in the States, but yeah.
I've spoken to people in their 20s who believe fully in separation, and let me tell you, they don't live in the city limits. It's always going to be a matter of us and them, city mouse, country mouse.
I went to law school in Quebec City, and the impression I got from Université Laval, which is an excellent school, a lot of the students there were from rural Quebec. They wanted a big city, big university experience, but they were scared to death of the diversity of Montreal, not just ethnically and linguistically, but in terms of gender identity. These are people who talk about defunding the military and, funding environmental initiatives. But if you talk about, giving people of color a seat at the table, or, being more welcoming of people outside the gender binary, they go,
yeah, well, it's kind of, I think that there is hope for the generation, but I think it's a matter of getting the right people to recruit them. But talking about the right wing taking over, some might say the right wing took over Twitter this year. Segueing to our next major topic, which is Elon Musk and Twitter. That was a big story this year. I'll just recap what happened. Elon Musk basically probably was maybe high or something and said he was going to take over. He's going to buy Twitter. Twitter called his bluff. They basically forced him to buy it. He spent way too much money on it, and he proceeded to try and quote unquote fix it, really basically destroy it, letting all the wrong people back on, and then deciding to just shut off servers, not pay rent at Twitter headquarters, randomly turn off servers, tried to sell blue check marks, and basically it's just been a comedy of errors. And now he did a poll, he's going to be stepping down as CEO. And the latest one is there's the latest story is with
Andrew Tate, who is, he was a kickboxer, and then he basically made his fortune being a misogynistic loudmouth, saying things that women should bear some responsibility for their own rape. And surprise, surprise, he's just been busted for human trafficking and rape in Romania. So he's not somebody who does a lot of misogynistic bluster to get clicks. He's a true believer, given what he's been arrested for.
Well, the underlying thing is that the horrible people online are still might actually be horrible people in real life.
I have to just interject, because when you said they let all the wrong people back on Twitter, I just have to say that it was never as black and white as that. And Twitter in its previous iteration was getting pretty easy to get kicked off of, I don't want to say that he let everybody back, and I don't want to say that everybody who was allowed back should have ever been kicked off. There's some debate as to that. What he shouldn't have done was fired all the people who were actually running things before he decided to do this. And I also want to retract maybe the part where you said he was high, because I've seen him high on Rogan, and he's far more entertaining at that time. It's when he's I don't know what made him think he was going to buy Twitter, but I was fascinated because I don't remember another time when a company was like, no, you said you'd buy it, and now you have to. It was like they couldn't give it away fast enough.
What I will say is that, with him taking, one thing that I was happy continued, even after he took over Twitter, was, does anybody else follow the conservative self-owns, where right-wing conservatives say something incredibly idiotic on Twitter, and those good people who are left on Twitter after Elon Musk took over just completely pillory them? And where Elon Musk is concerned, I don't think we should be expecting any kind of moral behavior from a guy who he and his family made his fortune on apartheid labor. It's no secret that that's where his family did it. They did it off the backs of Black people who are treated no better than slaves. And I think that's something we all need to remember. It's not, we shouldn't just be assuming that he's immoral because he's rich. So, that kind of, one would argue that that does speak for itself. But what I did, as I said, appreciate is, yeah, he let all the jerks on Twitter, but the good people who, made, I wouldn't say quite a mission, but an almost mission of, making sure that their statements became their own stocks or gibbets, where people would throw stuff at them. They persisted, and it's a regular, conservative self-owns are a regular thing circulating on social media, and they are every bit as glorious as you think they can be.
Yeah, just back to the Tate story, just to how it kind of relates more to the Twitters. Elon allowed him back on, but also he got into he started going after Greta Thunberg of all people, basically bragging about all his cars.
I own this many cars, and I'd be happy to send you all these emissions. And Greta Thunberg said, "Yeah, email them to me at bigdickenergy@getalife.com," or was it
Small Dick Energy?
Yeah. Small, and he responded. He responded, but in his response, he had a video. He had some pizza boxes, and he claimed that he didn't want to open he claimed that these better not be recycled. And okay, the story has changed a little bit, but initially the story was that the police in Romania, who had been looking for him, weren't sure if he was in the country, saw the pizza box, realized that's a Romania only chain, found out he was in the country, and went in to arrest him. Now, apparently they're claiming that maybe that wasn't the pizza boxes, but I mean, for a while there was almost a story of like Elon by accident, him letting this total loser back on Twitter might have helped bust up a potential sex trafficking ring. Like that might actually have been a good result of Elon taking over.
And it's a good example of a self-own. He did it to himself, and he's getting exactly what he deserves.
Yeah, and what's
it wasn't just him; they nailed his brother too.
Yeah, exactly. But I mean, he's I guess the face of the operation. And I mean, it's a pretty, I mean, obviously, like I'm astounded by the story. Obviously, human trafficking is a horrible thing. I'm not in any way making light of that, but it is a crazy, wild story. Like, and I guess one of the jokes I saw is Greta Thunberg actually brought his carbon emissions down to 0 in just 48 hours.
Well, I think her response, when the rumors about the pizza boxes were circulating, she said, "This is what happens when you don't recycle your pizza boxes."
But you can't recycle your pizza boxes. I don't think you're allowed. You're not allowed to here. I think there's the grease on it.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I've tried. I know I used to put pizza boxes in the recycling, and until someone told me they don't take though. Like they might take it, but they're not going to recycle it.
At a risk of sounding like a snob, I haven't seen a pizza box in a long time because I make mine from scratch.
There you go.
At the risk of sounding like a nihilist, although I do recycle, I don't really believe that it's getting there. So I'm pretty sure we're still sending it to poorer countries by the truckload and maybe throwing it in the ocean. Okay.
And those poorer countries, their healthcare, the healthcare
contacts in the Philippines, we are definitely sending it to other countries, and they don't like it.
Yeah. One thing that we're supposed to have here, we're supposed to at least have here is good healthcare. But segueing to the next topic, the Quebec healthcare system has been it was part of the election cycle. It was an election story. It's still a big story of basically the lack of efficiency in the Quebec healthcare system. Now,
bad. The emergency services are operating at 130% capacity. And
not just emergency services. It's actually, the problem is it's that there's a lack of resources, in that there's a lack of availability of doctors in and of itself. So we all know that we can't necessarily have a family doctor, but what we have been assuming is that when the family doctor refers you to a specialist, you can get timely care. And that isn't the case right now. So I work at a doctor's office. Assuming that you are a woman who just needs a normal upkeep with an OBGYN, like for instance, if you just need a PAP and you're not currently on fire in some drastic way that no woman wants to be on fire, the wait for a gynecologist for regular treatment is going to be upwards of 8 months. Now, assuming that you have a dermatological problem, we're talking 6 months to a year, depending on the severity of the problem. Biopsy results are getting back late. And so people are not only dropping out of the administrative staff and then the nursing staff, doctors are retiring. A psychiatrist, a young psychiatrist recently was just like throwing in the towel. And I shouldn't call it that because it's self-preservation at this point to get out of it. But we not only managed to strip the whole system bare, we managed to treat the people who were left with such disrespect that they have simply left the profession.
A lot of nurses I know who were approaching retirement age, the second they're old enough, they say, I'm out. One of the things that they had to do just before the holidays is they discharged a whole bunch of people to the hospital and they dumped them all on the CLSC. Everything from injections to occupational therapy assessments, things like that. And so, you know, the government has attempted to alleviate things by creating like nurse practitioner only clinics. They're expanding the power of pharmacists to prescribe very basic things. So like if you have an ear infection, which, you know,
they've been saying this for a long time, and I
they've
haven't
been saying this
seen
for
it
a
in
long
practice.
time, but to a certain extent, it's happening more in practice, but it's still putting a bandage on a gushing wound. And for example,
And it's also
had the
funny
nerve to
because I
say
know
no more mandatory overtime, but all the nurses are being forced to do it.
Legault wants to be able to turn around and say this is a problem that the federal government needs to send us money for, when really it's not. It's an organizational problem. It's a treatment of staff problem. It's a physical resources problem. And at the end of the day, all his money that he spends on trying to make sure that we say le pasta instead of just pasta could be better served by actually employing people who are scheduling to save our lives.
It's les pâtes, but yeah.
Les pâtes. Yeah, I was gonna.
No, but I mean, like, you can put, if you put le in front of anything, it'll pass as a French sign when you register it for the most intents and purposes. Like, that's the thing.
Legault disappointed me in a lot of ways this past year, and frankly, these past few years. But I think what is very, very telling is a lot of people who are working in healthcare who, you know, had no thought of working in healthcare, but decided to join in the effort when the pandemic hit and sort of continued to stay on. I wanted to see one photo op of him in a mask and one of those, you know, yellow protective gowns and something on his head. Just one photo of him at least attempting to understand what things are like on the ground and volunteering for a day, even if it was completely fabricated. I think he could have done more for his public image overall if he had just done that.
I don't think he could have pulled off the gown. I think it probably would have looked weird or something like that.
Yeah.
But yeah, okay. And obviously there's some healthcare tips coming up on just about tips for New Year's Eve. We're going to come to that later. But first,
hold on, I just paused because I just had to look up the budget for the Office de la Langue Française, which in 2020 was raised to $30.8 million. So we could assume that it's higher than that because that's September 2020 it went up. So just so we're clear, that's money that didn't go to biopsies, nurses, hospital wings, just so you know.
PABs.
Yeah. So we're gonna obviously we're gonna come back with some New Year's Eve healthcare tips or survival tips. But first, this is the year where the parties continued. Shows came back. We all went to see shows this year, right? Like just for laughs. But the Pop Montreal, I think we saw some plays. Or James Gartler saw some plays as well too. We all went. How did it feel being back out there?
Montreal Fringe came back with a vengeance.
Rocky
Horror came back in October after a nearly 3-year hiatus. Just for Laughs came back. You know, it was terrific to see. And this is not to say that it wasn't without risk, but I think where COVID is concerned, we've reached a point of slight complacency. Like, yeah, you're gonna get it. Yeah, it's gonna take you out for a while.
Yeah.
By the way, we have more deaths by COVID this year than either of the 2 previous years of the pandemic. which we could, once again, is partially because we're lax and partially because of the healthcare and
Are you talking about across?
Because the anti-maskers and the anti-vaxxers gained some ground during the election, and I think that's made Legault's government extremely reluctant. So, like, they let out a strong recommendation over the holidays to wear masks during large gatherings and stuff like that, but they won't make anything mandatory. And I say this as somebody who literally just got over COVID and could not lie completely horizontal for the first week and a half because I couldn't breathe.
Oh, so, but I mean, you're
You're
vaxxed, so you're not gonna necessarily die because you're vaxxed, but you have trouble breathing. So there is still effects even if
you're not gonna necessarily die. Also,
no, you're just going to be extremely miserable and wiped out, and exacerbating the load on the healthcare system. On top of that, there's that respiratory virus that's been prevalent among school-age children. But are they taking any real measures to keep the schools safer? Not really.
Yeah.
Also, we have to note the danger of long COVID and how that impacts. Possibly, the studies are showing possibly impacts latent viruses and could lead to things like chronic fatigue syndrome. They're trying to figure that out because we're saying but also the risk of myocarditis after getting COVID. A lot of anti-vaxxers were talking about the risk of that coming from the vaccine, when really after COVID you're at increased risk of heart troubles. So I mean, it's a all around spiral. Try not to catch it. As to Happy New Year's things, frickin' drink water, drink all the water. No, don't try to skip dinner so you could get drunker. This is ridiculous. You got to plan for it like a marathon, guys.
But it's also a good thing.
Do not play with fireworks. They're illegal within city limits. If you do not live in Montreal, look it up. I always make this joke every single year that people who are tempted to use fireworks on New Year's Eve really need to watch the Filipino news channels, because every year they show footage of people's bloody stumps or what's left of their hands and fingers after using fireworks. And let's be honest,
it's some redneck shit. Unless you currently own a tractor and you're setting it off near the tractor, I don't want to see your fireworks.
You guys should have.
Not to mention the fact that with all the concerns about the increase in gun violence, because we have a porous border with the US, the guns are coming in. With all the shootings that have been happening in the city, do you really want to set off something that sounds just like a gun?
I wish you guys had told me this before.
Outside my window last night in MDG.
I wish you guys had told me before not to play with fireworks, because you see, I already sort of started the party here. There's fireworks in my background.
That's actually the safest form of fireworks there are. It's the one on your screen right now.
The official one, yeah, but okay. But in general, though, I think there is also, like, yes, we should be more attentive. But I for one, I'm glad the shows came back, and I'm glad that, like, we're at least able to go. For example, Oshiega came back too. We covered that as well too.
Museum came back. Stop it.
Museums came back.
The museum right now is free as we're speaking, 30th, 31st, and I think maybe the 1st, but I could be wrong. But tomorrow, Saturday, the museum is free. The Montreal Museum of Fine Arts. You could go check out Basquiat, which you could read about on our website.
Oh yeah, and you could actually also read about you could read our year in review arts and your year in review news, which is going to be published Saturday, the same day that this is published. So it's all going to come up. Also, we have a new thing, which is the FTB email list. Now, we had one a few years ago. If you sign up for that, you're not on this one. You got to sign up to the new one. In the sidebar of the site, we're going to be sending a weekly digest of some of the best content from Forget the Box. Also, breaking news stories from us and other sources. And also, we're going to have exclusive contests for that. That's something we're going to start. Even if you signed up a month ago, it's going to be starting in the new year. So just sign up. Sam, your art, we can check your artist page out, right?
At facebook.com/SamIamArt, and I can be found on Instagram at SamIamArtistMTL.
Okay, and Don at McMoxie on Twitter and Instagram, while Twitter's still around. It's made it out of 2022 so far. We hope. Might change by the time this is up tomorrow. Jason C. McLean on Twitter, Instagram. You can follow if you're watching this. I Forget the Box on Facebook and Twitter and Instagram. And if you're watching this on Facebook, follow follow us on follow our page. If you're watching this on YouTube, smash that like button, subscribe, ring the bell for all notifications. Of course, check out our Android app. Well, first of all, our Android app, and sign up to the mailing list for daily content. Check out forgetthebox.net. And I guess from all of us, let's 1, 2, 3. Happy New Year! Thank you very much, and we'll catch you all next week for another FTB Weekend.